Welcome back, Global War 1939. We're going to do a mini series of all three Axis nations and their opening strategies to start the game. And hopefully, if your first couple turns go extremely well or favorable to you, then the hope is that the mid to late game will become a lot easier for you. Now, the political situation for Germany is that you're surrounded by enemies. They're on all sides. You have the United Kingdom and France to your west. You have Russia to your east, and then eventually the Americans will join the Allies and fight against you. So you got to be very careful of where you maneuver your army, where they are on the map, and the biggest thing to be conscious of every round is where do you keep your units? Are they out of position? Um, and then make your moves accordingly. So if we look at the map here, we do have Germany all set up. And now, once you execute your first move, which Germany has a special ability, it's called Blitzkrieg. Basically, what you're able to do is attack, do a non-combat move, have a purchase placement of that purchase, and then you immediately get to do another round of combat and a second round of non-combat moves, which utilized properly is very powerful and really kickstarts your economy, because the German nation itself only has IPP value of 24. So you certainly need to annex or capture further territory to really bump up your economy. Now, if you do your Blitzkrieg ability properly, if on the second round, you could potentially end up with a total of $95 to spend, which is massive this early in the game. So let's break this down and how you would accomplish the goal of acquiring that much income. So all these black dots here, these are the countries on the first impulse that we are either going to annex or capture. Um, Now, there's a bunch of different ways to go about this. The way I conduct these battles for Germany's first turn, I bring in enough force that you can take all these territories in either one round of combat or two, no more than two. If you're ever in a situation where you're trying to fight Reims and you're finding in your games that you're going into 3, 4, 5 rounds of combat, that is not good, because you're giving your enemy more dice to roll against you, inflicting more casualties. And it's extremely important for Germany's first turn that they suffer. Their losses have to be significantly lower than your purchase. Okay. Now Germany starts with $52, so that's kind of our benchmark. We don't want our losses to exceed 52 if you add up the cost of the units that you're losing. So that's the reason why we want every round of combat to be 1 or 2, no more than 2. And the way I figure this out, basically, whatever units, for example, Reims, whatever units that I'm going to bring in here, I'm going to add up all their combat values, divided by 12, and that should give you a good understanding of expected hits that you're going to land against the French on the opening round. And then you can easily calculate what they're going to hit against you, so you can bring in enough force that you can defeat that territory. Now you got to be careful because the French do start with a fortification, so that is quite tricky to overcome. But all these territories to attack and capture is very doable. So basically, I'll go into Holland. I'll bring in a couple of mechs, usually a tactical bomber to assist or a veteran fighter, something of that sort. Now, remember, your tactical bombers does give a boost to armor, so which is great. And then same thing with Reims. You're going to use a lot of your Air Force in Reims, and you're going to bring in a few armored vehicles, and those tactical bombers will give you an assist. Same thing with Western Poland. You're already got a sizable stack of infantry, artillery, um, mechanized to help you out in Western Poland, and then you're good from there. Now, under the old rule set, you were able to bring a mechanize and capture or annex Hungary and Romania all at once. Now, because of this factory that is here now, you have to stop. So, which is great because Austria starts with one infantry. So, just use this guy here. You don't need to waste a mech because in this scenario, any unit that can move two or more, or two, is a lot more valuable to you than just annexing. So, on the non combat move, you're just going to bring in that one infantry, annex Hungary, and then on the second impulse, you're going to use the same infantry to annex Romania. Perfect. Now, out of all these battles, like Reims is a little tricky, but it's very doable. Holland and Western Poland are definitely the easy of the two. And then now Oslo up here can be very tricky. Under the previous 8.0 rule set, Berlin started with 6 infantry and only 1 paratrooper, meaning you could only get 5 units up to Oslo. Now, under the new 8.1, we have 2 paratroopers, which is fantastic. Great, because now we can get up to 6 units up here. And you're going to bring your navy over to Sea Zone 17. You're going to clear out the British ship. You got plenty of submarines and destroyers to take care of that one vessel. And then you're going to save your battleship and your cruiser to do shore bombardment. Now, Oslo also has a fortification. The 4 units you're going to bring up with your transports are subject to that fort. So you got to be careful. But however, your 2 paratroopers that you bring up are not. So, which is fantastic. It gives them quite a bit of firepower to take care of that lone infantry defending. So once you take care of these territories and annex Hungary, then you're going to reevaluate what you have left over. Remember, you want each round of combat to last no more than 2. And then you're going to place your new acquired units. I would highly suggest you place all of them in Western Germany. That gives you mobility to go into Paris and into Normandy on the second impulse. And then also you can take out a couple of other territories. So the purchase option that I would suggest, you start with 52. Now, this gives you, this is what I typically do. Of course, you can break this up any way you want. There is a strategy where you buy submarines. That's totally viable as well. However, I believe that you should definitely take care of your land acquisitions. Make that a priority over the ocean. So I would go with 6 medium armor, 1 mech, 2 artillery, and 1 airborne. Now, all these are not just random units. There is a reason why we want these particular units. So for your second impulse, when you can use these, you're going to bring all 6 armor, the mech, and 1 artillery to assist with your surviving units from Reims and attack Paris. With these 8 units, plus whatever you have from Reims, Paris should fall. You don't even need your Air Force. Sometimes I'll bring in a plane or 2, but most games I just leave it to the army to take care of. Your paratrooper is actually going to go into Yugoslavia to assist with that, because stacking up positioning your army in your first non-combat move is extremely important. And your last artillery, that is going to go into Denmark to help with that. So let's take a look on what you should expect the state of the board after the first impulse. Okay, so the state of the map right now, this should roughly This is what the map should look like after your first rounds of combat. Now, from here, we, we basically used every unit that's available to us, except for 3 infantry here, 1 armor, which now we could have brought these into Poland, but that would have been a massive overkill. So we're going to save those units to move in the non-combat move phase, and you start with 5 infantry in Berlin, which is too far away to actually conduct combat anywhere. So what we're going to do in the non-combat move phase, everything else is moved. Basically, we're going to move these 2 infantry down to Austria. The leftover armor from Stettin that we didn't need is also going to go down to Austria. Now, the 5 infantry here, it is very important later on to collect your bonuses. It's very important to set these up in a certain way. So you're going to move 3 infantry into Western Germany. And the last 2 is going to jump onto a train, and the train's going to bring them down to Austria. So once that's all done, you should have 4 infantry and an armor in Austria ready to attack Yugoslavia. Now, of course, the infantry that we had that we started the game in Austria moved in and annexed Hungary. Now, you can also move an infantry from Czechoslovakia to annex Hungary, and then save that infantry in Austria to give you 1 more to attack Yugoslavia. It's just that you'll have 1 less infantry to go into Poland. So it doesn't really matter which way that you do that. I find the end result is still the same. All right. Now, and your Air Force, once all your combat moves are done, you're going to move all your Air Force into Western Germany. There's a couple reasons why Western Germany should be your staging ground for most of the game for the chunk of your Air Force. And that does a couple things. This whole sea zone here, if your Air Force is here, basically becomes a dead zone to the British or the Americans. As soon as they move vessels into any of these spaces, you're going to use your Air Force and attack them and take out those vessels. Basically forcing the British and the Americans to attack France once they decide to go into Europe, leaving Western Germany and Oslo, Denmark, pretty safe from Allied invasion. It's not completely safe. They can certainly go in there, but the Allies will be taking a massive risk with the German Air Force in Western Germany. So now, at this point, you would have your purchase of those 6 armor, mech, 2 artillery, and your airborne. And I would suggest put them all in Western Germany, because from there you can strike all your other territories that you need to. And as you can see in Poland, the follow-up battle into Warsaw, you're certainly going to have overwhelming odds on your favor. There's no reason why that should go past 2 rounds of combat. And the second impulse is the only real sketchy battle. The one you're worried about is Yugoslavia. And the reason for that, there's only minimal amount of land-based units you can get to Yugoslavia. So most of your Air Force is going to go into this battle, a good chunk of it. And they do have an AA gun, so there is a risk, a major, major risk to your Air Force. The worst case scenario I've ever seen, I got 3 of my tactical bombers got shot down, where the Yugoslavia got 3 hits, and I decided to use them on the tacticals, as they can be replaced, but your veteran fighters can't. So you want to save onto those. But that's the worst case that I've ever seen. And then we're all lined up in Reims. Now, we did suffer a few infantry losses over the course of all these battles. An expected result, you'll have 11 infantry losses. That should be expected. More than that, you're bad dice. Less than that, you're doing great. But expect around just under a dozen losses. And then round 2, that's when you'll start replacing your infantry corps to eventually go into Russia. But there should be no reason why you're taking losses on mechs, tanks, cavalry, your artillery. all those units that cost more, they should be completely safe behind that wall of infantry. So once you get your non-combat moves taken care of, and then your combat, then you would move in your second round of combat. This is where we're going to go into Paris, Normandy, Warsaw, and then we're going to take that last territory up here. So at this point, you definitely got overwhelming odds here, here, like the rest of these battles should be pretty easy. So once you move into all these and capture them, so from like Normandy only has 1 infantry, so having mechs here saved in Holland, now you can easily move in, right? All right. So once these territories are taken, you should have. Now, it's also very important to set up your non-combat round to collect as many bonuses that you can. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to purposely leave 2 units behind in Reims, and we're just going to go in with all these units here into Paris. At this point, with this much compared to what the French and the combined British have, you should have no issues taking out Paris. But we're purposely going to leave 2 units behind. Up here, again, you should have no issues. All you really need are 2 infantry, 1 infantry, and an artillery. You should be able to take care of that, and then you can keep your airborne behind as defense, as they have great defense stats. And there's up in Scandinavia, it is kind of hard to reinforce it. It's only really accessible by boat, so you do need to transport units if you do want more up there. But for the most part, you bring in 2 infantry, artillery, or 1 infantry, 1 artillery, you should be fine. Even if you do take that 1 hit, that should go 1 round of combat, possibly 2. And then again, Warsaw, that should fall quite easily. You will take a couple hits, and but for the most part, this worst case scenario, this is what you should be left with, right? And then from here, Yugoslavia, you're going to utilize most of your air force. You're going to bring that in. You should be able to win that quite, I wouldn't say decisively. You are going to take quite a few losses. So just for argument's sake, we'll say you took 4 losses. So as you can tell, using your infantry to take your hits like you should be doing, your infantry corps are going to take are going to be quite depleted. So that's why you want that high income on the second round to replace all those. And then when it comes to A gun, because you're bringing in such a force for your air power, you should expect 1, possibly 2 hits. Like I said, the worst case scenario I've ever seen with 3. But expect at least 1 hit on your air power, which is fine. But this territory does need to get taken. You could wait till round 2, but you're going to lose out on an income of 4. And you'll have to fight that battle on round 2, which round 2 and 3 should be solely remaneuvering, repurchasing. You should be fighting no battles on round 2 and 3. And then round 4 is when you start thinking about moving against the Soviets. Round 5, you're definitely full on war with Russia. So, so this is all moved. He's moved down here to annex Romania in the non-combat move. So basically at this point, the only units that you haven't moved, or for the non-combat, you have, and then in the Denmark, you're going to use your newly acquired artillery and 1 infantry to take out Denmark. And then you should have 2 units left in Western Germany and 2 left in Reims. Now, the reason why we want these units here, because you need to annex Finland, so you do need an infantry for that. So you're going to take him on your transport, bring him up to Sea Zone 19, and land him off in Helsinki. That activates Finland for you. But you need to leave an infantry behind, or one land-based unit behind. Doesn't have to be an infantry, but that's what I would do. Does need to be left behind because you want your third bonus. At this point, you're guaranteed to get two $5 bonuses, one from Russia for not being at war, and then one for owning these two territories, Denmark, for your iron ore. Now, you want to set this up for success so you can get your third bonus. The only one that's actually available on the first round to get. At this point, you're going to have units. You're going to have units already in Normandy because you've just fought a battle there, right? This is potentially what you should have. You're already going to have units here. You're going to have units here that you really didn't need on the second round. You could bring one extra mech into France or into Paris, but you're going to have overwhelming odds. So you can even use that mech to swing across Germany into Denmark, help you out there too as well, which is fine. But you're going to have units here as well. Denmark, you just fought a battle. You're going to have units. You just fought a battle here. You can't move. You're going to definitely keep some units behind here for defense. So basically that 7 territory that you need to have land-based units on is already covered for you. You're just missing one, which is Brodeur. Now, unfortunately, Brodeur comes down to a die roll, which I don't like to have to rely on that because a die roll can swing either way. And once Paris falls, all the remaining of the French territories and sea vessels get rolled for, and the land territories can either go Free French, which is aligned with the Allies, or you can go Vichy France, which is aligned with the Axis. So if Brodeur, you say you roll and you get a 2, now it's going to be aligned with the Axis, which is fantastic. There's no actual units there. This is a vacant territory. Now on your non-combat move, once all the rolling is done, on the non-combat move, you have a unit here that can move twice. So you're going to take this unit, go through Normandy, and down into Brodeur. Right? So the non-combat move, your land-based units are allowed to go through friendly territories, even if they were just captured that round. So there should be nothing stopping you from going from Reims down to Brodeur, and now you have units in 7 territories. This is why keeping a man in Western Germany is so important. Keeping 2 units, one of them has to be a unit that can move twice into Reims. Setting this up is extremely important to ensure that you get your third $5 bonus. And this is how we're going to potentially collect up to 95. And then, and out of all the French territories that are critical to success, I would say these 2 in mainland France are the most important. These are the 2 that you want to align to Vichy France, because, well, Germany collects that income. There would be units here to help defend that territory. You can't move them. You can't do anything with them, but they're just there for defense. So if the Allies come up through the Mediterranean, try to attack that territory, at least you have something to help you out. Now, in the unfortunate, say they roll a 5 or a 6, aligns with the Allies, that's fine. You have the Italians to come up and clean up. So either way, at the end of round 1, this will go. This will be under Axis control. Either Vichy France align with Germany, or the Italians will outright own it if the Allies pick it up. Now, if this territory aligns with the Allies, unfortunately, there's nothing you can actually do about it. You'll have to wait to collect that third bonus on round 2. You'll still get it at the end of round 2. It will 100% be yours, but you would rather want it on round 1 to collect that extra income. So it's a $6 total that you would get extra for taking it on round 1. Now, for the Navy, On your first impulse, there are a few things that you do need to do to have success in the Atlantic. So the Canadians have a few ships here in Sea Zone 21. The British have in Sea Zone 23, Sea Zone 14, and 17. Now, 17 you're going to take out because you do need to get into Oslo. So you're definitely going to take out that lone British vessel. All the ships that start in Sea Zone 24, you're going to ignore that. Most of them are French, and they're going to be rolled for. So there's a potential that you could pick up extra vessels. They could be sunk or join the British. And the more that join the British, they'll be unfortunate. But don't attack this. You're just wasting your own combat capabilities on vessels that 100% are going to be aligned against you. So this is the way they should be set up after the first round of first impulse. You're going to take your subs here, attack Canada. All the vessels that are in Sea Zone 18 will go in 17. And the two subs that are here, they'll also go in 17. So the only ones we didn't really move are the two coastal subs. Now, after the second impulse, what we're going to do, we're going to take these 5 subs. Now, there's also a chance that you could be losing a sub or two. The worst case scenario is I was left with 3 on 1 games. The best case is that the British or Canada doesn't get any hits. That's what you want. Well, let's just assume you can expect at least 1 loss. So the remaining subs are going to move down to Sea Zone 23 with your coastal subs are going to move up to Sea Zone 23. And here you're going to use some of your Air Force. You're going to use your medium bombers. They're going to come over to Sea Zone 23. They are in Western Germany. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you still got 1 movement left over. So plenty of space to get there and back. So you're going to use your bombers to help you out in this sea battle here. The remaining of your Navy, minus your transports. You don't need to bring your transports. You can keep them in Sea Zone 18. I would suggest bringing both of them back to 19. Because if you keep them in 18, the British Air Force can get over there and sink them. And there's very little you can do. But if you bring them up into 19, they're out of range for the British. And even from 19, they can help you out in the sea, moving units back and forth between Scandinavia and mainland Europe. So the rest will go up to 14. Now, this does create a problem where... Okay. So you can bring all that up there. This does create a problem that you should expect a counterattack. And that's why taking out the ships in Sea Zone 23 are very important. Because without sinking these, they'll definitely use their Air Force that they have in the UK and come up and take this Navy out. If that happens, then you're left with only a handful of subs. You've already lost the War of the Atlantic even before it really started. But if you take this out, then the only thing the British can hit you back with in a counterattack up here is their Air Force, and whatever ships from France go British. Which again, then the British are relying on a die roll even more so than you are on this one. So you'll definitely take those odds. And every time they roll a 1 with a ship, then it actually goes to the Germans, which is fantastic. Or that's like the best case scenario. And you would even take their sinking, but you certainly don't want them to go British. So if this goes correctly and the die rolls for the French vessels go slightly your way, they shouldn't be able to counterattack this, meaning that the end of the first round or start of the second round, you should have a sizable navy. You're going to pull them back into the Baltic Sea to protect them and come out later on mid-game. Then you can come out and challenge the British and the Americans. Once you see the British and Americans building up a transport fleet, because they're also going to have to build up a fleet of cruisers, battleships, destroyers to defend or to protect their transports from your fleet, and also from your Air Force if they ever get bringing up vessels in this sea zone, you're immediately going to attack them. You're not even going to think about it. Just attack them, get rid of them. Whatever ships or planes that you lose in any of these sea battles, you have to replace, because you want a sizable air force. You want your air force to be in such a manner that the British won't even think about bringing vessels up into any of these sea zones. This would be completely cut off to them. So, meaning that they can only patrol in the Atlantic. Now, the cruiser, they start off next to Brazil. Doesn't really matter what you do with it. Sometimes I'll bring it up to southern Liberia. Other times I'll bring it over into the South Atlantic next to Africa and challenge the British to have a few vessels there as well. So really depends on what you do with that, and that's totally up to yourself. So basically, at the end of round one, and now after the Paris battle, again, expect quite a few losses. But your 6 armor that you brought up, that should be completely intact. There's no reason why they take hits off those. Even your medium armor, your light armor should be intact, and you'll have a couple of other units as well. Now, from here, what I would normally do is anything surviving the Battle of Paris. On the second and third round, immediately I'm bringing them over next to Russia. I'm going to try to get them down to Romania as fast as I can. You can get there in 2 turns. You go, if this go, well, no matter what, this is going to be Axis controlled. If you roll for it and it turns German or Vichy France, great. If not, then the Italians will clear that out for you. But either way, you're going to take anything that can move 2 spaces, move down to northern Italy, and then through Yugoslavia into Romania. So by the end of turn 3, you should have an army stacked up in Romania ready to go after the Russians. And at this point, from purchases round 2, 3, I would focus mostly on infantry, armor, artillery. Don't forget your minor allies will also produce units for you as well. So you can get an infantry here every round, 2 infantry here, or an armor every round. Because after the first round, once everything's said and done, you should have an expected infantry loss of about 20. If you're hoping for less than that, you're probably not going to get it. Expect around 20 infantry losses. So you want round 2 and 3 to start replacing those. Now, where do we get the 95 from? Would be, there's again a little bit of luck involved. Both of these would have to be rolled for Vichy France. So your 24 that you get from your home country, 11 from France, and then all these territories here, they should all equal up to round 57. Now, once you take out Paris, France starts with $20 in their bank. Once you take out Paris, then you get that 20. And if this Brodeur rolls in your favor, then that's a bonus. You get a bonus from your iron ore and the bonus from Russia. So this is what you should expect to have to spend on your second round, right? Now, if things don't go your way, Brodeur doesn't roll in your favor, so expect that to be gone, that to be gone. So this is what you should have. So worst case scenario, this is the income that you'll have. Best case scenario, this is the income you'll have, roughly $95. All right, so that concludes the opening strategy for Germany. There is quite a bit going on, but once you run the strategy a few times, it becomes quite easy to remember what goes where you need your non-combat move actions to happen, the units that you need for each battle. So things should go quite well for you. A lot of it boils down to, like any battle in this game, comes down to the dice. And like I said a few times, these 2 territories, you are relying on a die roll. I don't like it. I would prefer if there was a way to mitigate that, but you really don't have enough units to attack Marseille, Paris, and Normandy. You could, but then you're weakening one attack over another, and of course you're going to prioritize taking Paris over Marseille. That's just a non-starter. So at the end, you should have victory cities. You should collect 2 new victory cities for the Axis after this round, your first round of combat. All right, perfect. Now, when it comes to, this is just a side thing. Basically, once the great thing about this game is that every person's map or board is completely different than the other. I would be shocked if two complete strangers had the same type of units, the same board, look and feel. So if you ever look at or watch my videos and then compare that with someone else's video, what they used for, say, their SS Mechs will be completely different than what I'm using. So this is a breakdown. So if you're following along in my videos, you'll have a better understanding of what I'm using for each unit. So for the Navy, and I try to use stock sculpts as much as I can. I just the way I prefer to have it. But of course, the best company to actually look into to acquiring different sculpts that you want to replace if you don't want to go with stock, or anything that you want, definitely check out or go to Historical Board Gaming. They probably have some of the best sculpts that are on the market, right? So for the battleship, I'm just going to use the battleship that I got. So it's pretty standard. So this is going to be my Bismarck. And then I got this from another box game, but it's the same sculpt, but it's smaller. So I'm going to use that as my coastal battleship. And then your aircraft carrier, pretty standard. And then cruiser, the destroyer. So most of these units you'll be able to instantly see if you played any kind of A&A game. You'll be able to completely easily recognize it. I don't really go too crazy off the sculpts that are the standard sculpts, right? So that's the sub, and then the coastal sub. I used to use red sculpts for this, but I got a replacement, so now it's all the same color. I don't mind mixing colors to a certain degree, but I would like keep every nation's color similar as much as I can. So that's just your standard stock infantry. And I got this one from Historical Board Gaming. This is the one that I'll use for my SS infantry. And then again, Historical Board Gaming, and that's my paratrooper. For the mechs, I got this one again from Historical Board Gaming, but it's the mech that you can purchase with the back of it carved out. So that's where the infantry would sit, I guess. But that's going to be my standard mech. And then my SS mech is going to be the one that you get from the box games, but the back of it is completely closed off. Cavalry, I don't like having men on horses. Yes, I understand that horsepower was used by all nations during the 1940s, but I would prefer to use a truck to represent my cavalry. And so that's for the Navy and infantry class units. This is the sculpt that I'm using for the Sturmjäger. Can't really pronounce it, but great unit, pretty cheap to purchase. Great on offense, not so much on defense, but it's fantastic on offense. This is going to be my self-propelled artillery. And the reason why these two are in gray when I went to purchase them, I was looking for black, but they were all sold out. So I decided to go with gray, kind of a throwback to the 1984. This is going to be my Pack 40. That's what we're going to use for that unit. This is going to be the one that I use for standard artillery. And then I'm going to use this sculpt here for the heavy artillery. And this is going to be the AA gun, which every nation is going to use the same one. For the Air Force, this is the Air Force that I have for the Germans. So this is the one that I'm going to use for the regular infantry. And this is going to be the sculpt that I use for the veterans. This is the jet fighter. You're probably not going to use a lot of these. You don't really need a lot of these sculpts. For if in your collection should be more than enough. And that's going to be the tactical bomber. That's the bomber. And then this is what I'm going to use for the heavy bomber. Now for the air transports, basically, once I got a bunch of stock games, I had an overwhelming amount of these bombers, way more than what you would actually need. You can easily get away with 5 to run the whole game. But so basically I just took anything that I knew I had excess of and cut off the engines, and that's going to be my air transport. Now, if you don't want to cut those engines off and make your own, again, Historical Board Gaming has a fantastic sculpt for the air transport. Now, for the artillery, or the armor, sorry, this is the one I'm using for the Panzer II, so the light armor. I got this from Historical Board Gaming. This is a stock unit. I'm going to use this for the medium armor, and I have an overwhelming amount of these. This is what I'm going to use for... So this is a sculpt that I'm going to use for the Mark IVs. So it's very similar to my medium tank, but the barrel is smaller and the color is slightly grayer. Then it's like an off black. So it is easy to distinguish on the map. It's going to be my Mark V. So that's the sculpt I'm using for that, which I do need more of these. And I got this from Historical Board Gaming as well. So I will definitely need at least minimum 5 more of these, if not 10. And this is another stock piece. I'm going to use that for the Tiger tank. So those are the units that I use for my game for the German nation. So if you're watching the videos, it'll be easier for you to follow along on what I'm using for each piece on the map without having to explain it every time. All right, so that's the German strategy moving forward. And like I said, there's nothing you can do about this third Allied or fourth Allied territory. You will have to take that out on turn 2, as every time you move into to annex each of these nations, even if you're using a unit that can move two spaces, the factory here will halt your movement. So you can only move 1 anyway. So using infantry, Czechoslovakia, Austria, move in, annex Hungary on first impulse, Romania on your second, and you're good to go. And then moving forward, if you take all these territories and hold on to the 3 bonuses until you're at war with Russia, once the extra income that you one-time bonus that you get from taking out Paris, every round moving forward, you should have roughly $75, $74, depending if one of these territories down here, if any one of these go pro-Axis, so Vichy, then you'll collect that $1 or $2 extra. So you could, if you don't have any of these, you'll have about 74. If you get one or two, 75, 76 for the next couple rounds until you go to war with Russia, which at that point you'll lose that $5 bonus that they provide you. However, once you kick off Barbarossa, between Baltic eastern Poland, this territory, western Ukraine, and possibly even get into here. That's very unlikely, but these three, two here, you'll get your $5 back, right? So as long as you're hitting a minimum these four territories, you'll negate the $5 loss by collecting $5 from these territories. So you'll still be at your 74 to 76 per turn. So it should be good. So hopefully this was educational. Hopefully, you know, go ahead, use the strategy, modify it any way you see fit. I would be interested to see if this works out for you or not. Again, expected loss after both impulses. You should expect roughly 20 infantry losses, possibly one of your tactical bombers, possibly two of your tactical bombers to be hit from the Yugoslavia battle. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Have a great day.